This is Laborin with the Fantasy Grounds Academy. Today we're going to talk about Fantasy Grounds bug reporting. So if you come across some issues, or perhaps maybe you've had some kind of behavior that's changed over the several days or months, you can report that in a couple different spots. I think the best spot would be to report it on the official Fantasy Grounds forums. That actually has a lot more visibility, a lot more people, a lot more eyes on it. You can certainly use the official Fantasy Grounds Discord if you're more comfortable with that. The only thing I could say on that is it's possible that there are cases when you post something and it might actually scroll away. So I think the conversational part of Discord is a lot more convenient. However, if you want something with some staying power, you're likely better off reporting it on the actual physical Fantasy Grounds website for their House of Healing, because in here, as soon as you post something, you get 10 other people contributing to that, and then it kind of scrolls away and it gets lost. So that's the only thing I can think of on there that is problematic with using Discord, because it's not a very good content server unless you have a permanent channel that no one can comment in, and then that kind of ceases the scrolling. The other thing is what type of help are you needing? So sometimes it's a Fantasy Grounds thing, sometimes it's a rule set type thing, sometimes it might be an account related thing like money, accessing the account, discounts, Steam sales and all those kinds of things. So there's probably, like I'd say, those are three main issues that you might come across. As you notice here on this bottom left, this is a check for updates. So obviously there's been some recent updates that have been published, and that this is kind of indicative of that there is some updates. Now you want to kind of try to avoid that before game day. So if you're going to play today, you obviously might want to do this well before or well after you're going to start your new session, just in case it introduces bugs or problems. It is difficult to convey that to your players because not everyone's on the same page. So that can be problematic. So if you tell your players don't update, half of them probably already have. So it's kind of difficult to establish that. But one thing that kind of harms that, I guess, is if someone wanted to buy something and they're kind of hesitant on updating the platform, that might come up occasionally. But for the most part, just try to avoid updating the product until you are certain that it's not going to be problematic for your next session. So that's the best advice that they give anyways. I personally would probably try to convey that to my players before we even start playing, like at session 0 or something, and let them know that occasionally these things come up. And then lately there's been, obviously with 4.6, there's been a lot of graphical issues and performance issues, but usually it's not this big of a dev cycle where they have to spend a lot of time fixing stuff. But usually maybe like a week or two. And I think we're going through a lot of pain because this development cycle the last 6 months has been pretty heavy. They've changed a lot of things. They're doing a lot of standardization. They're trying to optimize Fantasy Grounds. They're adding new features. So they got a lot of stuff going on. So it doesn't surprise me that some of this stuff is breaking. And it is getting kind of a frustrating, but I think they'll have it, squashed out by the end of this year, hopefully. And what I'm hoping is that after this phase of development, that's going to slow down a little bit, but we'll see. So I'm going to go ahead and hit check updates because I don't have a game coming up and I'm not too worried about breakage. And I'm also aware that there's probably some fixes in place, so I'm going to go ahead and update it. Over here on the right, you have the forums that you can go to. So if you're having problems, you can always drop down to this launch screen. And on the right-hand side, there's a forums link, which will take you straight to the House of Healing. This is the main place where you'd want to report errors and stuff like that. And then you also have, on the launcher, you also have Discord. So if you pop this up, this will take you to the official Discord and you can log in here. I recommend using the application, but you can use the web browser version if you want. And then, of course, you have the customer service, which is, I think this is more ideal. I mean, you can get technical support, but I think this works really good for like licensing, subscription, billing, that sort of thing. The next thing is this community efforts. Like for instance, for the Fantasy Grounds Academy, we're not the official SmiteWorks or Discord, but we do try to help people with more like in-game stuff and that sort of thing. So we're getting knowledge kind of secondhand. However, the advantage that we have over SmiteWorks, or the difference is that we have a lot of hands-on experience. So whereas Fantasy Grounds is more or less maintaining the platform and some of those aspects of it, we are using extensions and community content, and we're using the rule sets and the modules and stuff. So we usually catch other things that there's no way that SmiteWorks could actually catch everything. And I think that a community effort, and even people outside of our community, they find stuff too. So it's best to report this stuff if you can, and there is kind of a format or a way to do so. So I'm going to go ahead and click on check for updates, because like I said, I'm not too worried about breaking my games or worrying about having problems with Fantasy Grounds at this time. Now, if I was running a full-time campaign and such, I'd be a little hesitant, depending on what the fixes are supposed to address and depending on what page we're all on as far as the group goes. So it's kind of up to you, what you want to do or how you want to handle that. But obviously, this is going to fix, or it's working on the Fantasy Grounds platform itself. So as it's updating, you can kind of see the updates rolling through. There's something for Pathfinder 2, it looks like. And then it will go through all the modules. And if there's any errata or like typos or anything like that, usually Tuesdays is the time they'll update that stuff. So if you have like a missing graphic or something more minor, that they usually do most of those updates on Tuesdays. The incremental updates are usually weekly on Tuesdays. Some of the larger updates, I noticed they'll drop that like on a Wednesday, once or twice a month. This month's obviously been pretty hectic. They're having a lot of scrambling going on, trying to fix the graphic issues. But I think all in all, though, they're at least they're trying, and they take feedback from us to help them with their issues, because they have a kind of a small team, so they're not really fully staffed like they're not like Microsoft or something like that. But hopefully they can get some of these bugs. And then also the if you have any DLC, like stuff from the Fantasy Grounds Forge, that will update at this time, but there is no indicator that there's been an update. So you have to keep track of the thread, the actual Fantasy Grounds forums thread, where you actually subscribe to the extension and then go to the thread on the forums, kind of follow that. And that will give you an idea if it's anyone else who's having problems and that sort of thing. But what I wanted to go to is how to actually bring forth the logs that come from your game. So if you're having like a login error or something to do with networking, you can click on this hamburger menu, and that will bring up this console log, and you can hit compile logs, and it will actually bring up and compress a zip file, and you'll include your information in there, and then you can attach that to the forums, and I'll show you that shortly. So I'm going to go ahead and leave that up, or leave it minimized. But that's basically how you would compile the logs from this standpoint. So if you're not actually in Fantasy Grounds, this would be a way to do it. And if you're having problems, try to gather the logs within Fantasy Grounds. So I think I read that if you restart Fantasy Grounds, it kind of resets the error log. So if you see an error, we'll compile the logs inside Fantasy Grounds first if we can. So, and if you want to clear this, you can hit clear and then hit close. So I'm just going to load up a session, just kind of show you the process of doing that within. So I'm bringing up Fantasy Grounds right now, and while I'm waiting for it to load, I'd like to let all of you know that you still have, I think, till tomorrow if you're going to buy anything through the Fantasy Grounds store or on Steam. And if you're a Steam user, just remember that you have a little bit different return policy if you don't like what you're getting, and you have to synchronize your account if you are new to Fantasy Grounds. So synchronizing your account isn't too bad. You just go to the store drop down, and you just go to either Paizo, or you can go to your Steam account, and then you would make sure you're logged in, of course, and then you can link the accounts together. So that's something you want to do if you're doing Steam. That way it will pull in your purchases. The next thing is the Fantasy Grounds customer support portal. This is something that you can do to fill out, like if you want a refund or any type of other things or bugs even. This is actually a better way to do it because it forms like a tracking system. When we do it in the forums or on Discord, it doesn't create a really good system of tracking errors unless they do it themselves manually on their end. I'm not sure how customer service tracks all their bugs, but I think doing it through the portal is probably the most complete, but maybe not the most convenient. So back to Fantasy Grounds. If you're in the middle of the game and you get some console errors, you can open the log and report errors. So if you get the pop-up and you got all these error messages, you can come down here to the chat window, do /console. And when you do that, that brings up the console and it will show, whatever the errors that you have. And you just click on compile logs. And that will create a log so that you can send that to the Fantasy Grounds forums or the support portal. So that's how you do it inside of Fantasy Grounds. There is a thing you can use that I would use it sparingly. There's a console skip command, and you only want to use this sparingly. So like maybe you're in the middle of the game and you have some sort of issue with pop-ups continuously coming up. You can do a console skip command. The only problem with that is that you want to eventually address that. So if you don't want to use this constantly because it's telling you there's a problem. So console skip will basically stop the auto opening of the consoles and lets you finish your session up. And then when you're done, once you restart Fantasy Grounds, that console skip is not going to be active anymore. It'll just keep reminding you that there's an issue. So just use that sparingly. Like if you're in the middle of a game and you got to continue on, you can use that temporarily. It'll just disable the pop-up is all it'll do. And that's one thing that's helpful. Like if you're in the middle of a high stakes game and you just can't deal with the pop-ups, because it'll keep happening unless you disable it or you find the fix for it. So that is a kind of a workaround. So that was console space skip /, and then to bring up the console, you do /console, and that'll bring up the console, and then you would compile the log. So that's basically how you can do it in Fantasy Grounds, and it's ideal to do it right on the spot if you can, because sometimes if you restart Fantasy Grounds or you go back into it, those errors may not occur because you haven't done or triggered the event that created that. So kind of depends. And then, let's talk a little bit about what information the people who are doing customer service might need. So I'm at the Fantasy Grounds House of Healing, which is one of the support forums. So if you go to forums, and you look down under support forums, this is the first header up here. And as you can see, there's other people here that are reporting whatever their problems are having. So if you post a new thread, you can give it a title. So I am having issues. And then you would want to include things like your operating system's helpful sometimes. So maybe you're using a PC or a Mac. What version of Fantasy Grounds you're using, so 4.6.0, and then what rule set. So if you're using like D&D 5e or Pathfinder, make sure you include that. That's your minimums right here. Okay, a lot of people just come on and they're like, "Oh, I have a problem." They don't even give you this stuff, and that's kind of important to have that just to start off your conversation. Then a brief description of what you're experiencing. So you may not even be able to explain it fully, but at least give them an idea of what you were doing at the time. Once you have that, you can click this little paperclip attachment, and you can go on to your computer, or you can upload it. So I'm going to go to upload from your computer, this little pop-up window here. And this might be harder to do on a phone, so I wouldn't necessarily recommend doing it on a phone, but you might have access to it. But then you attach the log and you hit open here, and then you click upload, and that will attach the file to your post. Sometimes you have to do it twice. Like I don't know what's happening here, but for some reason, the very first time I do it, sometimes it doesn't take. So once you click this little drop down and select the actual file, then when you see this attach, that means the attachment's there. And if you have any pertinent screenshots that might illustrate your problem easier instead of trying to write an essay on it, you can also do that kind of similarly. Like, so if you have a screenshot, you can insert an image kind of the same way. You can do it from a URL. So if you posted it on a like Giphy or whatever the other third-party sites, that might be something you would do. And then and then you would choose the file and whatever the graphics. So if you wanted to attach an image of your problems that you're having, you do so. Once you're done, you can put a tag on here so that it kind of has a search term to it, and then you would submit the thread. If you want to keep up to date on it, or another post, perhaps maybe there's another problem that you notice that you're having that someone else is having, but you want to follow the conversation, you can actually click on, let's just say for instance, token reflection. You want to click on thread tools and go ahead and subscribe to the thread. And then from there, you can decide how often you want this to be pushed to you. So it can go through email. It'll check it either weekly or monthly or at the moment that a post is made. So this will help keep you informed as to what's going on with that particular issue. Or like I was saying, if you wanted to, like if you have an extension that you use all the time and you want to keep track of it, most of the content developers will put their content up here in the create and share section under the Armory, which in this case, maybe it's an extension. And then any extensions that you might be using, you can subscribe to these. So maybe it's the 5e Pets. Okay, and then you go to Thread Tools, and I'm going to subscribe to the thread. And then you can decide, okay, you want email notification, do you want daily updates, weekly? So I'd probably go with a weekly. I don't want it every day. And then it tells you which folder, so you can decide what folder. In this case, it's just a threads folder. And then I'll click on add subscription. So that's how you can follow along with things that are changing or evolving with either an issue or perhaps an update for an extension. And then the other thing you can do also in the forums is you can look at major releases. So let's look at today's releases that I had updated today. So here are some of the releases. So there was a Savage Worlds thing, some Pathfinder, which I noticed, and then there's a bunch of other stuff where these are mostly, like just little things that were added or fixed within an adventure or module. So a lot of these aren't major fixes, but they are stuff that's been addressed. So it could have been, stuff to do with rule sets, or maybe there was a typo. Maybe there was something that wasn't quite added, at the time. So these are just things that you will find with the actual content, more or less. So these are like the incremental changes. If it's something bigger, like a big release or something, usually like those will be posted in the section. So like for instance, rule set updates for 2024 D&D, there's a whole thread on it, and then you can go to the patch notes and look at what was changed. This has been a couple months, but that's kind of how you can kind of keep up on what's going on. And then if there's anything in test, which is basically a beta channel, I encourage you to at least check it out. It's not going to ruin your games, and it is a way to gauge some of the functionality of Fantasy Grounds without interrupting your main sessions. So if you go to the forums and you come to the laboratory, this is the place to basically give feedback and beta type things. So this also is a way for you to check out what they're working on. So if you are making an extension and you have issues with previous updates, or you're worried about the newest updates, you can come in here and test your work in the test channel, which is actually separate than the live channel. And like for instance, these are some things that people have reported recently. So these are things that that they're going to look into, and they're going to probably amend whatever they're working on. So it's important for us to try to help them with the test channel. The only thing about it, the only pushback I could give on that is that we don't always have the material to test with. So I don't think the test channel is for everyone. I mean, if you're brand new, you probably don't even know what to look for. However, report your problems on the appropriate forum thread, which was the House of Healing. But for new updated content that hasn't been released publicly, that's still in beta, that's what this is for. And I don't know how we can help them, because a lot of times it centers around using an extension or using a feature that may or may not apply to your rule set, or it may not apply to your specific case. So it is difficult to just say, hey, everyone come use the new version, because it's really not a good way to, I mean, there's no good way to really know what to look for, especially if you're really new or you're only hyper focused on one thing. So I'm not sure how this is helpful, but I'm sure they catch some things, just basic stuff and things with developers and that sort of thing. But as far as public testing goes, using the content and actually playing with the rules and rolling dice and all that stuff, I don't know how much of that gets reported, but those are the kind of your day-to-day stuff, usually not game breaking, but nonetheless you may come across something. So if that's the case and you're using test channel, which is the beta channel, maybe there's a 4.6.1 coming up, you might participate in that depending on your role and what you're doing with Fantasy Grounds. But it's not an easy thing, because a lot of individuals are saying, well, why don't you guys test this stuff? Well, you just really know, what are you testing for? You don't know what to test for. You don't even know what the parameters are. Even if it's a new feature, you may not ever use that in your game, so you're not going to know what to look for. So it's kind of a catch-22 on beta testing. So that's basically what I wanted to cover today. So your resources is when you actually launch Fantasy Grounds and you go to, I'm going to go back to the actual launch page. So I'll right-click, go to Exit Session, and left click on Return to Launcher. So all of these are tutorials, user manual, DLC, forums, Discord, FAQs, support, release notes. All that's right here. You don't have to go all over the place looking for it. It's like right here on the launcher. I don't know how many times I bring up the website and I'm looking for the forums when I can just click on this button and it takes me straight there. I don't know why I can't figure that out, but that's something I noticed that I overlook quite a bit. So anyhow, folks, hopefully this helps a little bit with getting an idea of how to report errors and the types of things you might be facing when you're having issues with Fantasy Grounds. But there is kind of an unspoken kind of format for it. Make sure you give them your rule set, your operating system, what Fantasy Grounds version, at least that at the minimum, and then go from there. And if it's something specific to, like, let's say it's a 5e thing, like maybe it's Dungeons and Dragons or something. So if it is a D&D thing and not necessarily a Fantasy Grounds thing, you can go to the actual game system, the rule set, and for instance, this is 5e, and there's threads for the new Player's Handbook and the new Dungeon Master's Guide, and then there's some stuff that's from the legacy content, like the older stuff, the pre-2024. And then there's other things. There's questions about, how does a Storm Sorcerer work? Or how come I don't have enough spell slots? Those sort of things. So if you go to the rule set and post those kind of issues there, that's helpful. And kind of the same thing in Discord. So for instance, in the Fantasy Grounds official forums, you have this overall support, but then you also have rule set specific channels. So if you're having issues with the actual rules, or you're uncertain with how things work and that, then you have channels for that too. So it's kind of in both situations, both cases, you have areas that you can post things that are probably a little bit more prevalent or useful to the community and to support. So anyhow, you guys take care. Have a good day, and I'm almost certain they'll have a lot of this stuff knocked out, hopefully by the end of the month. And I'm thinking that it's going to take a bit, because there's quite a bit of things that were impacted, it looks like. So